I am the most luckiest person in the whole wide world to have been able to do what I love all my life and actually make a living out of it. I could give you the long version and the short version. If I started with the long version, we'd be here for a while. But actually, my father, I do this in a couple sentences. My father worked for Al Capone in the 30s, and he had a big boat. And then he started fishing. He started out fishing in Wausau Sound, then he started moving offshore. And the reason he had a big boat is he could spend the night on the big boat. Well, he started taking friends of friends of friends, and the next thing he knew, he was in the charter business. And that's how we ended up in the charter business, with people actually wanting to go bring their friends in. Well, we'll pay, we'll pay to go. And then that's how we ended up. And then more likely than, my mother got killed in an automobile wreck when I was 5. And back then there wasn't any places you could drop your children off. So Daddy took me fishing with him every day. And he had a 40-foot boat. And I'm talking about a one-level 40-foot boat. I had more places on there to play. It was my whole playground. There was a dash on his, this is just a regular dash. His dash, I could sit on his dash, sit on it, and play on his dash. That's how big these dashes were. I mean, they would go for on, and then you'd go down below, and I had a place to sleep. It had double restrooms back then. I don't even know if we called them heads in, but we had restrooms. We had plenty of space. I fished with him, and I learned a lot fishing with him. He was a regular fisherman. He loved fishing. And he pretty much had the same values I did about it. It's just the greatest thing in the world to be able to go catch a fish. And I found out that Daddy's big old long boat, it had like big staterooms in it. And I came home one day and he'd taken a saw and cut the whole back end of it off. He said, we need more room. Double beds sitting outside. So he cut the beds out and put in benches, and we sat there and fished. But I could still fish out that side window. And I caught more fish than anybody, because you pull a hook right behind the back of the boat, you're going to catch a fish. It don't matter what it is you're pulling, but you're going to catch something. So I ended up loving fishing as much as Daddy did, and he had a bunch of boats here. He would buy boats and fix them up. Basically, back then, and if you look at all my records, I broke a lot of state records in the 80s. I mean, probably 6 or 7 state, couple of world records. But I could have broke a lot more because I was embarrassed. Most of the fish that I even turned in, I was embarrassed because I didn't think they were big enough. So back in the old days, that's all we caught was actually big fish. We started out near shore, triple tail, cobia, redfish out here on the front beach fronts, and then we moved offshore to what they called the Blackfish Banks, which historically, I'm sure everybody, if you're old enough, you can remember the Blackfish Banks, which to me, it's just my opinion, that the Blackfish Banks was much like Gray's Reef, except of course when they started dredging the Savannah River. And this is all my opinion, that all got covered up, and we have that moving stuff here, the silt and everything, it gets covered, but that was a live bottom area. We used to catch everything, snapper, grouper, sailfish, you name it, in 60 foot of water. And that was 10 miles offshore. And we used to travel there, and we would catch everything. I don't know if that's where, I'm just equating to that time frame to when that bottom started covering up, because it became less and less harder and harder to find. And you have to remember, when we started fishing, fish finders were flashers. Right off of Tybee Island to a place where there was a black and white can, an actual black and white can, which marked the area of the live bottom of the Blackfish Banks. Now, occasionally, Daddy would go, he'd say, we're going way out today. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we're going past the Blackfish Banks, and he would go. And that's when the Texas Tower was up. So you could use that as a point of reference. But I mean, Daddy, we never were concerned about point of references or never anything, because you had the navigational sense. It was just there for you. Everything told you where you were, how far offshore you were, where you needed to get back. It's just something you can't teach anybody. It's just something over years you just develop. So he would just go, take a 90-degree head, and we'd just go. And we pulled lures. Of course, the boat only ran 12 knots. So we just pulled lures everywhere we went. We'd catch fish. Sometimes we never even knew what they were. The first time I saw a wahoo, I was like, this is the wildest looking king mackerel I have ever seen in my whole life. Daddy says, well, I guess it is. I mean, Well, we finally figured out it was a wahoo, but my father built coolers. You know, there wasn't igloo coolers like there were back in the old days. He just built a cooler and he showed it full of something that, you know, had a barrier in it. And, you know, we would catch so many fish, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you had a 180 quart cooler now or a 160 quart cooler, that was a full cooler. And, you know, you're talking about big fish. So if you got into king mackerel or something like that, you really, Daddy called them silver kings. Well, we do haphazardly catch them. You know, we have our good years and bad years with king mackerel as the migration goes. We don't, you know, we catch it, we limit out a lot on king mackerel, which is 3 per person now. But as far as catching that many fish, I don't know if it's more about them not being as available or that we know now, we're more educated about the fact that I know from past stupid things that I've done, like when I found the wreck offshore. I mean, I caught 7,000 pounds of fish off it over a couple of years, but why did I just, you know, I should have just, that was 4 again before limits. So why didn't I just catch a few and go on? So what we do now basically is, I think I could still catch a ton of fish, but number one, the customer is not that really interested in it. It's more about the experience. Or I've tried to move my customers in that direction. It's more about the experience than anything else. So one fish takes up about 5 minutes by the time I explain, like the black sea bass is born a female, turns into a male, guess what? Then it changes back and they go, what? When you get them on that, they want to hear everything. So, you know, that kind of slows fishing down for that point, and then you move on to something else. So that's what I'm doing now. But as far as me being able to go and catch that many fish every day, no. But as far as me being able to go out there and really load the boat on any particular day, I can still do that. But I would be forfeiting a lot of good days of fishing just for one big show. When I became a part of the Grays Reef, you know, when I became on the advisory panel, we quit going. Not because I figured that I would leave all that alone, because a lot of people were fishing there that, you know, that would never get to go where I get to go. And I can go anywhere to fish. And, you know, this is an area that should be for people that just want to go fishing, recreational fishermen. So we quit going there. But what I found out about the reef before I quit fishing there was truly amazing. You know, I've pretty much I already had the bottom, the parts that I fished. And I know the places, it's a big area, but the places that I fish, I caught a whole bunch of fish. A whole bunch of bottom fish and a whole bunch of king mackerel. Some of the biggest kings I ever caught, I caught there. And I could go back in my records right now and tell you probably where to go catch king mackerel right now. Not at this day and time. Not right now with as cold as it is, but, you know, during the time. And I have helped many people have called me over the years. I've given them ideas about, you know, okay, you look for the bait. This is where they're going to be. That ledge is big enough that it holds bait during the summer. So the bait's over here, the ledge is over here, you know, based on the drift of the tide and everything. And I pretty much can send people there. Recreational people, mostly. I think it's good that they should be the ones who use it. When you throw an anchor, you send noise that vibrates the whole bottom, which tells the fish, hey, I'm not going over there. That's either a big fish that's going to eat me, or either it's just something I'm not used to. So there's good noise and there's bad noise, and that's bad noise. So as far as just, you know, when you go fishing, and there's a lot of people out there doing the same thing you are, it's okay to ride by and say, well, I'm going to try that next time. Because obviously when a person's sitting there catching fish, there's probably fish there. But there's no use ruining it. So, you know, I think everybody needs to get along on the water. You know, the competitiveness is there, but there's got to be more of an understanding. And I think the only reason that people that do things that they do that make other people upset is because they don't think. And they really don't do it on purpose. Fishermen are basically good people. But yes, a conservationist. And yes, I'm not going to say that the stocks are depleted, because they are down. Because when you throw this many people in the arena catching fish, you know, you're going to, until it levels out, until the bag limits catch up. And believe me, the bag limits are doing a great job. I was totally before bag limits, before conservation, before triggerfish became popular. My daddy says, how are you going to clean it? Just get rid of it. So, you know, now triggerfish is a delicacy, you know. So, plus all the stuff about them is so interesting. But, you know, it's more about conservation and trying to take one fish and doing a lot more with it than you did 100 fish. I mean, after all, if you go out there and catch 100 fish, don't you get tired of catching 100? I mean, you know, you got to think about it after a while. And I think a lot of people feel that way now. And In fact, a whole bunch of people feel that way. Because when you have people go fishing with you every year and they say, well, I still got the same fish in the freezer I had last year, let's just go catch them and release them. So I know to try to target fish that I know I'm not going to affect too much by catching and releasing, because it really doesn't matter to them what kind of fish it is. It's just something that pulls on the line. And that's why I like fishing so much.